Tsushima, 1274. An island under siege.
The Mongol Empire is invading our home. They are brutal, relentless, unstoppable. We are 80 samurai against an army, fighting to slow the invasion. Today, I die for my people.
Tsushima and its samurai stand ready for battle. Bound by honor, they face death as the Mongol Empire arrives, swords sharpened on the shores of Komoda Beach. Within 60 seconds, the central conflict is established. The antagonistic force is overwhelming, and our protagonist, Jin Sakai, is at this narrative's center as this game barrels towards its inciting incident. Within 60 seconds, the stage is set, and over the next 3 minutes, the show begins.
Samurai! Do you surrender? Cowards without honor deserve no mercy. No mercy!
Ghost of Tsushima's introduction wastes no time, and neither will this video's. You're thrown right into the center of the chaos as Lord Shimura leads the charge. Driven by pride and tradition, the defenders of Tsushima attack, and their code is an immediate crutch that's used to wipe them out. Jin falls, and from this point onward, it's not entirely clear if it was Jin Sakai who got back up, or instead, something else entirely. In 2020, Sucker Punch Productions did the unexpected. A studio previously known for games about anthropomorphic raccoons and the superhero fiction that is Infamous, found themselves with a shocking departure to realism. Elegance where there was once chaos, beauty where there was once grunge, an open-world feudal Japan period piece, and no one expected them to pull it off this damn well. Jin wakes up, his wounds bandaged and his sword missing. After a flashback that effectively blends a basic tutorial with effective character setup, Ghost continues its seamless harmony of tutorialization and world building. Jin searches for his belongings, and we meet Yuna, a common thief with a code of tactics that the samurai would spit on, who Jin now finds himself indebted to. If you've stumbled onto this video, you're probably wondering what exactly you've gotten yourself into. And don't worry, you'll soon find out. But first, as Jin and Yuna sneak past the Mongols in a rather unconvincing stealth sequence, we learn that Lord Shimura is alive and is being held captive by Mongol leader Khotun Khan. So as the last samurai left, Jin rides to Castle Canada and assaults it head on. Still driven by honor, still driven by his uncle's code, he storms the front gate and cuts a path straight through to the Khan, where, for the last time, it's not enough. This is the day that Jin Sakai died, and where the ghost was born. Ghost of Tsushima's introduction doesn't reinvent the wheel. Much of it is an extended tutorial driven by story beats and character setup, but it delivers an inciting incident with grandiose. In 45 minutes, you have a mechanical foundation, a congruent canvas for the world, and a strong narrative momentum to carry you forward. It spares no expense in being tense, captivating, and effective in its purpose. You're hooked, and it's up to the rest of the game to keep you engaged. This video is a critique, but a far less structured one than I'm used to. It's a highly edited playthrough, one that attempts to showcase the brilliant cinematic edge this game embodies, with my thoughts, commentary, and criticisms interjected throughout, covering the story as we go, and broader topics as they become relevant. At the time of writing this, I don't really know if I can pull it off, but you know what? I'm gonna try anyways, and you can't stop me. Ghost of Tsushima is one of my favorite games to come from the 8th generation of consoles, and despite its flaws, despite its persistent, systemic problems that lie beneath its stunning art and cinematic presentation. Dare I say, it's one of the best. So strap in, grab a snack, and stick around if you like what you see, because we have an island to save. With its protectors all but wiped out, Tsushima has fallen under Mongol siege, Lord Shimura remains captive, and Jin, now the island's last hope, must rescue his uncle before it's too late. Ghost of Tsushima at its core is a story about sacrifice, heroism, and the cost of war. As Jin's legend grows, as he continues to trade his honor, his code, his life, to become something more. At every stage, it's also a moral dissection of the samurai code, one that asks what honor is worth when your world is crumbling around you, when dying for tradition and pride means condemning your people to death. Those are the themes, and throughout this video you're gonna see just how connected they are to every aspect of this game, and how in Act 1, it only begins to flourish. In order to rescue his uncle from Castle Canada, Jin must recruit what allies he can to aid him. Yuna's motivations are made clear early on. Her brother Taka, who happens to be a talented blacksmith, was taken by Mongols, and she needs Jin's help to save him. And with that, this game throws you into its world with a running start, where its first stroke of brilliance arrives in a gust of wind. Tsushima, an open world. In 2020, Tsushima had the task of not standing out, but rising above. It's no secret that the open world genre has long since devolved into a formula synonymous with stale, tried, generic, and we're all too familiar with its components. A checklist of chores presented through an invasive UI, too much filler content, not enough variety, a map filled with question marks disguising repetition as discovery, or a gameplay loop that stretches the best parts of it so far apart you have to muddle through too much monotony to bother. You can say I'm exaggerating, you can say I'm understating, and you can point to a handful of games that prove either case. But one thing is certain, the sentiment is there. The good of your favorite open worlds feels so often diluted by the mediocrity of others. That was the case in 2020, and it certainly still is today. And before Elden Ring came along and eviscerated the fucking bar, before Tears of the Kingdom proved that Breath of the Wild can happen twice, Tsushima made its mark, and it didn't rise above, but it did manage to stand out. The island of Tsushima is not a one-to-one recreation of 13th century Japan, but instead, a highly romanticized, mythic vision of the samurai era, one that balances grounded historical detail with artistic romanticism, and it makes for the perfect staging ground for Jin's transformation, and a stylized backdrop for an immersive samurai epic, as every choice in its design, every artistic brushstroke, and every slice of its gameplay is in service of this game's core vision. Take a look at this footage. What do you see? A rainfall of crimson leaves falling from the branches of a sacred tree. Fields of white flowing in the background, a swarm of birds flocking above it, and a mirage of trees dancing in the wind as the pagoda of a great temple peeks from the tree line. It's peaceful, quiet, but no less alive. From golden forests to misty swamps, crimson fields and snow-capped peaks, every frame in Tsushima is a painting in motion, painted with vibrance and life, with wonder and mysticism. It's more than just a simple case of breathtaking art. It's how the wind stirs foliage around you, how fireflies illuminate your field of view at night, how petals drift across fields of timeless, unstill beauty. Nature doesn't just surround you, it's with you in a sense, alive, reactive, and shifting. It gives Tsushima character, a soul of its own that layers its mythical undertones beneath the surface of the island, beneath the larger conflict taking place. It's elegant, and synergized with exploration. Instead of intrusive waypoints or a clunky compass, the guiding wind, what's believed to be the spirit of Jin's late father, blows towards your objectives. As you explore, golden birds appear to lead you to nearby side content. Foxes whisk you off the beaten path to Inari shrines. That spiritual connection with the island is imbued with explorative elements, and the game's progression, infusing a refreshing refinement to the open world formula, giving that blissful animation of environments a mechanical purpose, and keeping UI elements to a minimum, and your immersion to a maximum. It's pretty to look at. Must have been hard to optimize, but the result was worth it. Cause you wanna know what else is hard? Not the content itself. Maybe it's a hot spring you find, a tiny oasis that provides a chance to rest, upgrade your health, and reflect on Jin's journey and the events that unfold. Or a haiku spot, which provides a similar moment of reflection, but this time imbued with the beauty and serenity of the landscape around you. Bamboo strikes are a chance to hone your resolve through a series of quick inputs. Shinto shrines are traversal challenges that take you to the highest peaks of Tsushima, where you can remain in awe of how damn gorgeous this world looks. There is much to be said about the quality of Tsushima's open world content, and much will be said, but when you take it for its intent, for the spurts of blissful levity they represent, this game is magical. But let's return to that vibrant scenery, where, to our right, that sense of elegance, of spiritual harmony is unbalanced as chaos disturbs the peace. Burned villages, decimated fields, charred corpses, and the harsh brutality of Mongol camps assault every plain, every forest, every village that once beamed with life. The Mongols brought violence and upheaval to Tsushima, a violent clash of culture that sets this canvas aflame and stains it with blood. Every charred field is an echo of Tsushima's plea for salvation, every smoldering village a cry to the ghost. This island is suffocating, and only you can do something about it. Lean into the chaos and follow the smoke plumes of Mongol outposts that call you to action from afar, or assault the roaming hordes of enemies who hold peasants hostage, slaughter others, and terrorize inns and villages alike. Tsushima is an island at war, under siege by a ruthless enemy, and every time you see a forest burned to ash, an outpost harshly inserted into a quiet plain, you're reminded of the stakes, of why Jin chooses to walk the path of the ghost. And that's not just good art, but compelling environmental storytelling. Traversing the rural landscapes of Tsushima is mesmerizing for, if nothing else, that very reason. Exploration makes an effort to refine the open world formula, to separate itself through a consistent and breathtaking realization of this game's thematic and contextual vision. It compromises nothing in its attempt to be an immersive samurai epic, a perfect staging ground for Jin's transformation. And it is immersive, if nothing else. But it's also a facade. This design achieves what many open worlds strive for: immersion through diegetic exploration, that being the act of exploring a game world using only the elements that exist within that world and its context. And beneath it lies a familiar rhythm. Fox dens, hot springs, haikus, Shinto shrines, bamboo strikes, pillars of honor, and vanity gear. These are the activities that populate Tsushima, and there is value in all of them. At its best, they're the spurts of levity you stumble across, a momentary escape from a world at war, where you can bask in the romanticized beauty of the island. But at its worst, repetition chips away at your immersion. Because fox dens are just running, hot springs are one button click, haikus are 3, Shinto shrines are purely traversal, which is mostly one button held and pressed repeatedly, and would be mind-numbing if not for the grappling hook, and pillars of honor and vanity gear are cosmetic collectibles and nothing more. The common thread here is that there's nothing mechanically interesting about any of this content, and with how much of it there is to do, it grows repetitive quickly once its novelty fades. And it will fade. One thing that Tsushima is often praised for is its quality of life commitments to exploration. You can pick shit up from your horse without having to dismount, fast travel to any point of interest you come across instantly. You won't have to sit through realistic animations of looting fucking cupboards for the time it takes to age gracefully, because trivial actions are instantaneous. But how about your horse being able to swim, or ride faster than the underwhelming speed it's fixed to? How about parkour having actual consistency with what ledges you can and can't cling on to? Or Jin being able to stomach more than a 3-foot drop without the tuck and roll upgrade? This might not break immersion, but it does dull exploration. It makes traversing Tsushima less fluent, which makes the limited variety of open world content less convenient. And when that content grows predictable and repetitive, it's often more appealing to simply ignore it. The first time you do a fox den, it's enchanting. The 10th time, it's another box to check. And the 40th, it's agonizing. When a river separates you and your 15th haiku, I'd rather ride right past it. Shinto shrines become tedious far sooner than fox dens, and are nowhere near differentiated enough, even with the grappling hook in play. Hot springs, haikus, and bamboo strikes admittedly remain harmless for the most part, but there's just nowhere near enough variety. By the time you're even halfway through Act 1, you've seen everything there is to find. Discovery becomes routine becomes monotony, and exploration becomes a chore. In that spiritual essence, the guiding wind, the birds and foxes that whisk you off the beaten path, become a fleeting novelty, because it's only a matter of time before you resort to checking question marks off the map like a list of chores. And just like that, faster than you can say subscribe or I'll DM your mom, exploration is reduced right back down to the mediocre lows of your least favorite Assassin's Creed game. And that's a damn shame, because there is so much to love about this world. The presentation, the blissful harmony of atmosphere and art, how goddamn cinematic it looks at every stage. And so, the verdict then becomes subjective. How often have you been here before? How many fox dens until you've had enough? How long until Tsushima's facade fades for you? For some, it might be as early as Act 1. For others, not at all. For me, you'll find out. But for now, let's check in on Jin and see what's become of our good and honorable samurai. Oof, not very good or honorable now, is it? Jin's first dishonorable kill, striking from the shadows, is brutal, bloody, and difficult. In order to reach Yuna's brother alive, in order to save Tsushima as a whole, the samurai way will not work. Jin must adapt, and this is the start of his descent. The first blood-soaked rock in a landslide, and it scares him.
Jin, what's wrong?
Let's find your brother.
This is also the first outpost Jin takes on, assuming of course you ran past all the ones on the way over here, or tried to take one on and got skewered like last night's dinner. But outposts are this game's core mechanical sandbox, the central gameplay loop that unifies this game's direction under its North Star: liberate Tsushima. Through this simple objective, the open world and its mountain of content is tied to Jin's journey, tied to this game's core vision. Each outpost cleared builds your legend, reveals the map around it, and works towards your overarching goal. And it's a good thing they're fun, because there are a lot of outposts. A lot. And this one in particular ends up being a rather trivial encounter. It's a stealth tutorial at the end of the day, but it's carried by its context, momentously woven through the gruesome lens of dishonor and necessity. Taka was not found here though, and instead was taken to Azamo Bay, where Jin delves even further into dishonor. But before rescuing Yuna's brother, let's turn our attention to Jin's other allies, and to the other half of this game's side content.
Don't move!
Sensei Ishikawa.
Sensei Sadanobu Ishikawa never made it to Komoda Beach, and when Jin tracks him down, you quickly learn why. Ishikawa's former student, Tomoe, has betrayed him. As you follow her trail to a Mongol camp whilst learning the fundamentals of the half-bow, a brash disagreement between teacher and student is revealed to be a cold-blooded betrayal. Tomoe has joined the proverbial dark side, and is now spreading Ishikawa's techniques to the enemy. And so the sensei agrees to help Jin rescue Lord Shimura, but on the condition that he helps him find Tomoe before she goes too far, kicking off the very first of this game's character tales. Tales are the other half of Tsushima's side content. When you're not clearing an outpost, chasing after your 37th fox, or averting your gaze from Jin's thick samurai cheeks in a hot spring, you're doing a tale. Tales are divided into 3 categories: mythic tales, character tales, and the rest, which I'll call basic bitch tales. Mythic tales are the really good ones, character tales are the other really good ones, and basic bitch tales are neither. Starting with basic bitch tales. What is there to say that my chosen name for them hasn't already? The main problem with them, of course, is that they're basic and repetitive. 90% of these quests follow the same formula of going to a place, investigating things, and following tracks to a brief combat encounter. This is a gameplay loop that isn't very fun, and doing it 26 times is even less fun. At its best, these quests are a collection of paper-thin thematic ties to the world and this game's themes. A father forced to choose between sons, a peasant posing as a samurai for glory, enriching ideas, but the paper is wet. Characters are lifeless. Most can't even be granted the dignity of a name. I'm sorry, what's that, peasant? And with the same stale gameplay formula for most of them, it's hard to categorize these quests as anything other than padding. But it's not to say there aren't outliers, like this quest where Mongol archers rain down arrows from 2 sides of a canyon, which is a unique twist of environmental combat design. Azamo Bay is a large outpost that's presented as a side quest, which is technically different, and the mystery of Sago Mill does still have that same repetitive loop, but I found the mystery actually intriguing, which made it stand out. These don't shatter the mold so much as to say I actually liked them, but at least there's a little variety. I just wish the rest tried a little harder. Like mythic tales do. Seek out the stories of Tsushima's great legends, mystical tales of divine power, ancient weapons, deadly curses, and demonic spirits. Hear the tale, journey to the source, and dance with forces beyond the mortal plane. The power that legends hold throughout Tsushima is rooted in belief, and mythic tales accentuate that power, blur the lines between reality and fable, and revel in the mysticism that's woven into the very fabric of this world. unravel the curse of Utsune and claim his demonic longbow in a storm of bloody crows, hunt down a rogue samurai, tame the lightning, and learn Shigenori's heavenly strike in a duel coded in a raging thunderstorm, face the 6 blades of Kojiro and claim the Kensei armor, or ascend the frozen peaks of Mount Jogaku, where warmth is a fleeting resource, and reach its top to harness the way of the flame. The ghost isn't the only legend that holds power in Tsushima, and in facing that power, you claim the most significant unlocks this game has to offer in cinematic spectacles that rival this campaign's best moments. Mythic Tales are easily the best missions in the game, even if 6 out of 7 of them mechanically resemble a scavenger hunt. They are unmatched in presentation, in spectacle, in reinforcing the power of myth, and above all, in strengthening the significance of the one you're building yourself. That's good quest design, for no other reason than cool shit happening in ways that are never so exaggerated as to fracture this game's lens of realism, but straddles the line just enough to make you wonder, to understand why and how this world believes in the mythic, in legends. And it's also how you make a repetitive mission structure consistently engaging in ways that make each quest feel unique, and that makes Mythic Tales captivating in ways that nothing else quite does in Tsushima. But character tales do get pretty close. When it comes to Tsushima's last remaining category of tales, they serve what's perhaps the most resonant of purposes. If basic bitch tales are microcosms of the invasion's effects on Tsushima's people, and Mythic Tales are first-hand nosedives into the fantastical, then character tales are direct explorations of this game's themes, and run complementary to Jin's journey in every way. Each of Jin's allies, this game's supporting cast, is given a lengthy questline that unfolds alongside the main campaign, fleshing out each character's histories and motivations, and they work because the characters themselves work. They're well written, flawed, damaged, and human in their own unique ways. From a gameplay and mission structure standpoint, sure, they're a mixed bag, but these tales are as much an introspection of Jin's own arc as they are standalone stories. Let's start with Sensei Ishikawa. As you track down Tomoe throughout Acts 1 and 2, the trail of innocent bodies she leaves continues to pile. Ishikawa himself comes out the gate as brash and unlikable. He lies to Jin time and time again about the details of Tomoe's defection, questions his abilities, and insults him at every chance. But as you chip away at his samurai pride, his motivations come into focus. Beneath the arrogance lies fear. Fear of repeating his past mistakes, of training yet another student in Jin who's destined to rebel. And when strong writing meets gameplay encounters that have actual variety, this questline shines. Ishikawa's missions emphasize ranged combat, using terrain and encounter design to encourage creative use of the bow, and it's refreshing. But the most memorable part of this questline actually comes in a moment of calm. When Jin helps a kind woman named Matsu catch her dinner, he listens to her dreams of traveling to the mainland and opening up a shop one day, a serene detour that contrasts the vengeful hunt you've been spiraling down. And when Matsu reveals herself to be Tomoe, the monstrous image that's been built up, the dangerous demon that Ishikawa painted, crumbles. She's not a villain, but a person, flawed and selfish, who much like her mentor, has made many mistakes. By the end, Ishikawa's story resolves not with vengeance, but understanding. After helping Tomoe undo her mistakes, rekindling a fragment of the bond they once had, he lets her go, showing a kind of mercy that Jin will later struggle to find with his uncle. Ishikawa's arc might not have the flashiest battles or the biggest payoff, but it has a fitting end to a solid story that's distinct in both gameplay and narrative. And although it's not my favorite among the character tales, not all of them end so gracefully.
Clan Adachi is dead.
Mainly Lady Mazuko Adachi's, which swings hard in the darker direction. Mazuko's entire family, children, grandchildren, everyone, has been slaughtered by her own retainers, and revenge takes her down a path filled with rage and despair. Mazuko's questline often repeats itself. A few too many tailing missions, a few too many plot conveniences in the form of conveniently written lists of conspirators. But Mazuko's grief is raw, unrelenting, and increasingly self-destructive. As she continues to spiral towards insanity, the complexity of her emotions begins to unravel as we learn more about her history, her affair with a former servant, the fact that she stole her sister's rightful place as Lady Adachi. She's no saint, but she loved her family, and a painstakingly human picture is painted. And with nothing left, Mazuko's rage reaches its boiling point when she attacks Jin, and you're forced to duel her in a moment that's shocking and memorable in the sense that it's unexpected, and you're not entirely sure if you're gonna be forced to kill her here. Mazuko eventually chills the fuck out, and they discover that her own sister orchestrated the massacre, driven by resentment for the life Mazuko stole from her. The final confrontation doesn't end in vindication. Mazuko again chills the fuck out, and leaves her sister to end the torment herself, teetering off the edge that she's already thrown herself over a couple missions ago. A tale of revenge and its cost. A theme fairly prominent in Jin's own story. Mazuko and Ishikawa's tales are the first you're introduced to, and together, they do more than just fill out side content. They reinforce the main narrative from different angles. Ishikawa's relationship with Tomoe mirrors Jin's conflict with Shimura, and Mazuko's rampage parallels Jin's own descent into the ghost. And beyond that, Norio's explores the consequences that Jin's legend reaps. Norio is a noble warrior monk that you meet at the beginning of Act 2, and much of his questline admittedly takes a while before it gets interesting. As you help Norio defend temples and villages from Mongol attacks, the difference between the two is stark. Jin is already straddling the line between honor and necessity by this point, sneaking through enemy camps and assassinating invaders, while Norio holds on to his beliefs that violence, while sometimes necessary, should serve mercy. And his greatest inspiration is that of his brother, Enjo the Guardian Monk, who is a beacon of hope for his people. After defending a few temples, liberating some others, and wondering why a few of these earlier missions weren't cut, Norio's faith is ultimately shattered when he finds his brother alive. The Mongols have tortured and mutilated him beyond recognition, corrupting the vestige of hope that he once represented, and after putting him down, Norio doesn't find closure or peace, but rage. And more dangerously, a new inspiration in the ghost. This questline ends rather shockingly as you roam through the aftermath of a massacre. Norio slaughtered an entire Mongol camp single-handedly, not to protect his people, nor to honor his brother's memory, but for bloody, violent revenge. As burning Mongols scream in panic for their lives, you can almost hear echoes of Jin's own path as the ghost. His legend has inspired a once honorable friend to give in to hate, to vengeance, to the monster that spawns from war. And Norio liked it. His descent is compelling, and its only hindrance is how long it actually takes to begin. But by the time it's over, Norio remains a reminder that even when Jin is doing what he deems is necessary, he's treading dangerously close to that same abyss. But my favorite of the character tales is actually Yuna's. Yuna was the first to save Jin, the first to challenge his samurai ideals, and the first to show him that honor means nothing to the starving. But this tale isn't about her nudging Jin to play dirty for the island's sake. It's about Yuna confronting her past, and Jin embracing the ghost all the more as a result. Yuna hears that a group of slavers have resurfaced, men she thought were long gone, and asks Jin to help hunt them down. There's no talk of honor or strategy, no pretense of justice. The ghost exacts her revenge. Jin stealthily beheads the slaver triad known as the Mamushi brothers, displaying their heads in a gruesome warning to the Mongols. He tracks down the Black Wolf, who sold Yuna and Taka to the brothers as children, and gives Yuna the chance to avenge her stolen innocence. And finally, Atlan, one of the Khan's top generals who's responsible for the slavers' resurgence, pays for his crimes with his head. Short, simple, and incredibly resonant with the main campaign, Jin's given yet another push towards the ghost, and Yuna's character is fleshed out meaningfully, which only deepens the impact of the events to come. And so you see, Tsushima's character tales are not distractions from the main story, but refractions of it. Parallels are drawn, themes are explored, and fleshing out this game's supporting cast in stories this well written forms a deep connection between Jin and his allies, and to Tsushima by extension. Even Yuriko's tale, 2 short quests serve as a melancholic reminder of the innocence Jin once had, and the person he's left behind. As you travel with Yuriko, gathering herbs for new poisons to use against the Mongols, she recalls the happiest moments of her life, ones where Jin is young and surrounded by family, the final echo of the boy who once fought for the purity of honor, who now prepares deadly poison to use against his enemies. And when she passes amongst the flowers, the last remnant of Clan Sakai, the last of Jin's family next to his uncle, becomes a memory fading in the wind. These tales run complementary to Jin's journey, not as diversions from the main quest, but a part of it in every way, refracted through different lives, parallels and reflections of Jin's growing legend, his relationship with his uncle, the consequences the ghost reaps, even when most of them fail to find variation in its gameplay structure. In a game where the wind always points towards your next destination, these stories remind you why you're still moving. Not for honor, not for legacy, but for the people that are the reasons to keep going forward.
Lord Sakai!
What the
Lord Sakai!
Ugh, not this guy.
You have stumbled
we're not doing
on a
you.
perfect
Nope.
opportunity, my lord.
Fuck off, Kenji.
Jin Sakai. Ryuzo. You look like a scarecrow. You've looked better too.
An old friendship rekindled. Ryuzo was a childhood friend of Jin's, and the last time they saw each other, Jin just soloed him in a 1v1, defeating his best bro in a tournament and subsequently squashing any chances of him ever becoming a samurai. Skill issue if you ask me. But today, guess who happens to be the leader of the Straw Hats we set out to recruit? But Ryuzo is not the same person Jin remembers, as that tournament so long ago was more than just a competition for him, and bro is not over it. As you travel with Ryuzo and fight Mongol hordes by his side, he makes his resentment for that day well known and throws quite a bit of shade.
You did whatever it took to win.
It was a competition. You fought just as hard.
Did I?
What are you getting at?
Nothing. Just remembering our duel.
Bitch, but it's in the past. And no matter how tempted I am to start roasting his mother on Xbox Live.
So yeah, you're gay.
There are more pressing concerns. The Straw Hats are starving, and so Jin cuts a deal. He'll help feed Ryuzo's men by stealing food from the Mongols' own supply, and in return, the Ronin will aid in Jin's efforts to retake Castle Canada and be paid for it afterwards. Ryuzo is well characterized throughout this stretch of the game. You understand clearly the responsibility he carries for his men, and you see his lingering resentment for Jin seep through the friendship they both still feel. And this does telegraph his coming betrayal. Quite obviously, solid characterization pays its price in predictability. But with Ryuzo recruited, Act 1 stage is finally set. After successfully recruiting Sensei Ishikawa, Lady Mazuko, the Ronin, and extracting Taka from Azamo Bay, Jin goes to Komatsu Forge with Yuna and her brother, where its people wait in fear as a Mongol attack approaches. The sequence that follows is a harmonistic blend of combat and narrative cohesion, as Jin cuts down Mongols one group at a time, saving the people of Komatsu one by one. His fighting style has already evolved by this point, and as you dismantle groups of enemies through both samurai and ghost tactics, the people witness the vengeful brutality on display. And by the end of this mission, Komatsu is liberated, and Jin's legend is born.
I've never seen a samurai fight like that. It was nothing.
You are more than a samurai. He is a vengeful spirit, back from the grave to slaughter the Mongols.
Where do we hide now? You don't. Fire up a forge, and get back to making strong Komatsu weapons. That's how we fight back. That's how we'll save Lord Shimura. Vengeful spirit?
I think they liked it.
This is where the ghost becomes more than a man, more than a samurai forgoing his honor, but a symbol of hope for its people, one of fear for its enemies, a legend. And you need only hear it take life in the towns and temples of the region to find proof. The ghost, a vengeful spirit back from the grave to slaughter Mongols. The ghost, a demon 10 feet tall with black eyes, thirsty for Mongol blood. It inspires as many as it frightens. A synchronous consistency within the world and the story's progression makes Jin's growing myth all the more tangible. Taka, being among the inspired bunch, eventually fills Jin's order of a grappling hook within 1 to 3 business days despite the Canada Post strike, and was just in time for Ryuzo to arrive with terrible news. His best Straw Hats have been captured. Real bummer, man. But at least we get to use our new grappling hook. In video games, it's universally known that grappling hooks are always fun, and that's very much the case here. Its biggest contribution is how it's used to traverse outposts in new ways, scaling walls and swinging across rooftops. Providing its design enables it, it adds a welcome verticality to stealth, and extends the novelty of both outposts and Shinto shrines with a new layer of depth. Jin has no problem finding and freeing the captured Ronin, but something is off here. The Mongols kept the Ronin well fed, refrained from torture and slaughter, which are like their 2 favorite things to do, and kept them happy enough to sing, which is not their usual MO. It's another drop in the foreshadowing bucket for the coming twist, as if it wasn't obvious enough. But with the Ronin freed, Jin has everything he needs to rescue his uncle, and we have everything we need to conclude this video's first act. So far, has this section felt a bit meandering? Has it been loosely structured and frequently detouring from the core narrative at hand? Well, I'd love to say it's on purpose, but I'm most likely just not very good at this whole YouTube video thing. But it's also no coincidence that Act 1 very much plays the same. Its campaign is hyper-focused on world building. It spends much of its time setting up characters for their own side tales, priming others for future twists, and setting Jin on his arc to becoming the Ghost. And it does slow down the pacing. Its loosely connected story structure and the fact that Act 1's region is by far the largest in the game brings it dangerously close to dragging. But it's not in vain. The groundwork it lays becomes the foundation for the stroke of brilliance that's to follow. And I'm not just talking about the story, I'm talking about Tsushima, and how it became that staging ground. A world unbalanced and at war, where its people are suffering, where legends hold power through belief, and where your allies ground this story in the bonds you form. A subtle ludonarrative excellence is woven throughout Tsushima, and I think it's perhaps one of Ghost's most underappreciated aspects. Everything about this world complements its narrative. It's not just about its story, but about how Tsushima enhances it. But yeah, its story is pretty important too. By Act 1's end, Jin is primed for his descent. His legend has begun to spread, and with his allies assembled, it culminates in a worthy finale. With Taka's new grappling hook, Jin can now scale the walls of Castle Canada and slip inside the multi-layered outpost that plays like a proper samurai siege. Objective A is stealth. Reach the main gate and let your party into the fortress, where Objective B is to storm the castle. The battle gets chaotic quickly as a small army rushes to meet you on a narrow series of inclined pathways and rigid corners. It makes for an onslaught that feels endless without overwhelming, and emulates the grandeur and spectacle of a siege as if it were directed by Kurosawa himself. But in the chaos, amongst Jin's allies, Ryuzo and his Straw Hats are nowhere to be found. Because, well...
Ryuzo.
The Khan put a bounty on the Ghost. Anyone can claim it.
You wouldn't.
My men are starving, Jin.
Help me save my uncle, and he will reward your men. He will make you samurai.
Then he'll send us to die. Just like he did at Komoda Beach.
Ryuzo.
He's your family, Jin. I need to protect mine.
Predictable? Well, it's the classic best bro anime betrayal arc that I've personally seen one too many times. But effective? Absolutely. Ryuzo stabs Jin in the back, a decision driven by a complex range of resentment, cowardice, responsibility, and fear. And for Jin, it's a wound that cuts deep, and serves as another push that drives him further towards the Ghost.
Enough! It's not too late. Help me save our home.
It belongs to them now.
Ryuzo. He's here! The samurai is here!
And off he goes. And off we go, right back into the fray. Jin finally reaches Lord Shimura, and after retaking the castle in one more glorious battle, Lord Shimura is free, and Act 2 begins.
I heard of your exploits while I was in prison. Your methods were brutal, impulsive, without honor.
I did what I had to. For you.
I know, Jin. And I will be forever in your debt. But you can't continue down this path. All of Tsushima looks to us for guidance. We must save our home together. As samurai.
Yep, Right. The Khan marched north and took the Jito's castle, burning everything in his path. And with Lord Shimura free, the samurai have a momentum that they can't afford to lose, and all eyes are set on Castle Shimura. Act 2 is without a doubt the strongest stretch of this game, one that hones in on what Ghost of Tsushima does at its best as its narrative, mechanical, and thematic synergy hit its peak. Act 1 set the stage, and as the pieces fall into place, what culminates here, will begin building in Act 1, is a story, a power fantasy, and an epic, in every sense of the word. And to understand how exactly Tsushima pulls it off, we have to rewind the clock and talk about combat. Where the elegant meets the visceral, combat in Ghost of Tsushima is as consistent as it is evolving. When Jin first crawls from Komoda Beach, his samurai code drives every swing of his katana. Light attacks slice defenseless flesh to pieces, heavy attacks break through enemy guard, and charged heavy attacks trade speed for guaranteed visceral damage. At this stage of the game, Jin's moveset is limited, and it renders defensive play a necessity and the challenge a definite reality. Block incoming attacks to stall damage but limit reactivity, dodge and roll to evade or reposition, and parry to reward good timing with an opening for damage. Every strike is visceral, every parry satisfying, and every kill rewarding. But it's hard, you're quickly overwhelmed, and the specific breadth of enemies plays a critical role in how this foundation evolves. Sword-wielding enemies are the easiest to take down with only a few heavy attacks to break their guard, but shields have a much stronger defensive barrier. Arrows pose great risk to damage if not swiftly evaded, and spear enemies, and especially brutes, can't be blocked, parried, or staggered, only dodged, and demand a great deal of respect from the player by forcing defensive play. Tsushima starts you off with the bare minimum. The path of the samurai is one destined to fail, and how that's reflected in the early game's mechanical foundation is incredibly consistent with that. Groups of Mongols any larger than 5 pose a substantial threat, making ghost tactics a damn near necessity, and it's not until you start liberating the island does your moveset evolve. The perfect parry doubles down on precision with a tighter timing window and a far more devastating counterattack. The perfect dodge follows suit and does the same to the same effective degree, enhancing the skill ceiling of defensive play. Taking to the samurai skill tree, you can broaden your means of gaining resolve. The resource primarily used for healing, unlock the ability to block arrows, parry spear attacks, and shoulder charge enemies. Jin's foundational moveset grows less rigid. Precise timing, tactical inputs, and improved survivability scales to match the initial struggle. But it's stances that become the real solution to this game's challenge. 4 unique movesets, each tailored to dismantling the corresponding defenses. Stone Stance specializes in breaking through sword-wielding enemies. Water Stance makes cutting through shields easier than a carrot cake. The Wind Stance's attacks have an emphasis on overhead swings and closing vast distances, which is perfect for spears. And the Moon Stance can be used to finally stagger brutes until they have a severe concussion and a severed windpipe. Stances don't create new ways to kill enemies, but rather they become the new best way for each corresponding weapon. And the depth lies in target prioritization. Combat becomes a dance of critical micro-decisions as enemy numbers grow in size. Brutes are equipped with an array of different weapons, which means they have an array of different movesets, the most oppressive being this shotgun thingy. But charge into the herd too impulsively and you might find yourself surrounded by archers, where the half-bow is better spent while some distance is still between you and the crowd of angry protesters. Sometimes it's as simple as matching paper to rock to scissors, or katana to jugular, but others it's as complex as which weapon type poses the greatest threat relative to your positioning. Am I backed into a corner where there isn't the time or space to execute a string of water stance heavy attacks on shield enemies? Is there a balanced enough distance between enemies where spears pose the most immediate mid-range threat? Or are multiple brutes winding up their hand cannons, making damage unavoidable without a swift flurry of moon stance attacks? In a sea of Mongols all fighting for your attention, you have to quickly and decisively synchronize your given target to the appropriate tools while managing resources, positioning, and everything else clipping at your heels. And it feels incredibly rewarding to master. A visceral surge of mechanical bliss and Kurosawa influence brings to life a samurai fantasy that's fluid, cinematic, and distinct. This isn't Arkham's rhythmic free flow, nor Sekiro's precision ballet. It's not Neo, Fallen Order, or Ninja Gaiden. Sucker Punch have carved out a distinct mechanical identity for this game, and as much as it's often debased to a rock paper scissors comparison, that misrepresentation undersells its depth, and how much fun it really is. But that's not to say it's without mechanical inconsistencies, because there are cracks in this sidewalk. Targeting, for one, is inconsistent. Most of the time you can aim your attacks and cleanly connect to the guy you want to kill, but other times you snap onto the wrong foe nearby, and others, Jin decides to slaughter the air molecules next to the guy you want to hit. For most attacks, it's not consistent enough to be a problem, but the Wind Stance's follow-up to the Typhoon Kick might as well have a mind of its own, because it just doesn't work, which is bad. But what's far more intrusive is this game's toughest enemy type: the camera. Confined spaces? Terrible. Medium-sized arenas cluttered with geometry. Just as bad if you're standing anywhere near a mid-sized asset. This camera loves to whip behind walls, trees, or your own shoulder at the exact moment an enemy wants to poke you with a stick or thrust a sword into your abdomen, which turns combat into slapstick levels of comedy at times. In the grand scheme of things, it's another minor inconsistency, one that grows frustrating in succession to the point it's worth mentioning, but it's not frequent enough to become significant. I needed something to complain about, didn't I? And no, the lock-on feature that was added post-launch does not solve this issue. In fact, it makes it worse. But regardless, when combat clicks, small groups can be cut through like butter, and large ones become this fantasy at its absolute best, and in one-on-one duels. It's peak cinema. This is what I fucking paid for. Duels are as cinematic as they are engaging. In 95% of cases, your stance is best left fixed to your opponent's singular weapon, but there are movesets to learn, attack patterns to memorize, and vulnerability windows to exploit, proper boss mechanics, and yet, I wish they were harder. Don't get me wrong, there are certainly a few duels here that gave me a run for my money. And hey, maybe I'm just made of pure 100% unadulterated fucking skill, in which case this point is subjective. But the vast majority of this game's duels, the campaign ones especially, I found rather easy, which made them underwhelming in a way. And that's coming from a hard mode playthrough. But duels are epic regardless, and that cinematic edge that defines so much of this game's attractiveness is in its purest form here. And it bleeds well beyond it too. Standoffs carry that same cinematic flair. 3 consecutive kills and 1 erection to start off a head-on combat approach. And even down to the minimal UI, the animations, every lethal blow, every sheath of your katana, every time Jin strips butt-fuck naked in a hot spring, is somehow cinematic. If you want a samurai game, Ghost of Tsushima is the fucking samurai game. And it's not even close. But we've neglected the other half of this game's mechanical sandbox, haven't we? Because Tsushima initially presents combat through 2 distinct paths, the samurai and the ghost, and ghost combat is where things get interesting. With the unforgiving nature of the early game's samurai combat comes a strong incentive to embrace the shadows, to stay hidden, and walk the path of the ghost. At this stage of the game, stealth is easy, and it only gets easier. Enhanced hearing is your detective mode, quickening the information phase of gathering intel and tracking patrols, and beyond that, the environment is your best resource. Cling to rooftops for elevation, crouch in tall grasses for concealment, and plan your approach with the few tools available. But much like combat, stealth evolves. The grappling hook injects a much needed verticality into arenas. The half-bow and the longbow enables you to take out isolated targets from a distance. Wind chimes can distract a single guard. Firecrackers can distract multiple. Chain assassinations lets you kill up to 2 additional enemies in succession, and poison and hallucination darts enable both easy kills and psychological warfare. Information, planning, and execution are the baseline mechanical phases of any stealth game, and here, they're okay. Every assassination is as sharp and visceral as open combat, and most arenas are designed well enough to encourage multiple approaches. But to sum up Ghost of Tsushima's stealth in a nutshell, it's stealth, and you've played it before. Mechanically fine-tuned, you're given enough tools to make it an intrinsic sandbox in certain situations, and it's all perfectly fine, but also uninspired. It's mid, to be honest, nowhere near as distinct or refined as samurai combat, and it suffers from one very big problem. AI is fucking brain dead. From crippling tunnel vision to borderline blindness, to a complete and total lack of situational awareness, any semblance of challenge or depth that could be found here is gutted from stealth. Enemies forget your existence within seconds, fail to notice bodies lying 3 feet away, and treat tall grass like a black hole for human perception. Patrol paths are practically non-existent, as most enemies just stand around for minutes at a time, usually in the most secluded spots imaginable. What's this guy even doing? Is he in a timeout? Maximum disbelief has to be suspended if you want an immersive stealth experience here, and you need only look to games released over 10 years ago to see the glaring differences in AI stealth behavior. And that makes it easy, almost insultingly so, and worse, completely devoid of consequence. Fortunately for this game, the implications of this problem don't surface until much later. But Act 1's combat presents its dichotomy clearly, the samurai, punishing honor with relenting challenge, and the ghost, bending that code for a necessary advantage. But that line so clearly drawn eventually starts to blur. Samurai combat evolves to a flow state. Ghost tactics start to present dynamic approaches. And Act 2 dials up the progressional synergy that keeps the heart of this game pumping through its strongest stretch yet. But first, let's take a detour.
Jin, help me. May your death benefit all beings.
Yeah, childhood trauma's a bitch. But that doesn't matter right now, cause look at this drip. Wait, hold on. Okay, that's better. Jin returns home to claim the armor of Clan Sakai, the same armor his father wore the day he was killed in front of him. This is an event that has shaped the course of this very story, and in trudging up ghosts from the past, we're reminded of what makes Jin Sakai such a compelling protagonist. A remarkably efficient use of well-paced flashbacks and present-day events throughout the prologue in Act 1 cement Jin's motivations and characterizes him thoroughly. The guilt he carries over his father's death, that helpless, paralyzing fear that still haunts him today, has instilled a fundamental need to protect others, to never become that helpless kid again, no matter the cost. He's kinda like Batman. Okay, he's exactly like Batman, minus the fatalities, and the samurai upbringing he was given through Lord Shimura. Although, even that isn't far off. But it's through his origins where we're shown the root of Jin's transformation, the seed that pulls him towards the ghost, where that unshakable determination to protect his people stems from, and why he's so willing to sacrifice everything for it. It's what makes him heroic, and complex, and all the more compelling, because Jin never forgot that feeling, and when who he is at his core becomes at odds with the code his uncle raised him by, you don't question Jin's choices for a second. And that's damn good characterization sold to us through brilliant writing and a brilliant performance from Daisuke Tsuji. And with that, you have yourself a recipe baked to perfection for a strong contender in the Gaming Protagonist Hall of Fame. And I don't say that lightly. But armor, that's why we're here, isn't it? Armor is the centerpiece of Tsushima's build crafting. Each set is tailored to a unique playstyle, with unique buffs and abilities that tailor gameplay to that playstyle. Don a set that doubles your standoff streak, or enhances the damage of ghost weapons, or increases the likelihood to terrify enemies. Build for stealth, damage, survivability, ranged combat, samurai-specific abilities, or ghost weapons, and further personalized through charms to take each playstyle to its limits. Major charms provide significant buffs, and minor charms are often used to complement them. And as a whole, it's a solid system with room for expression, room to build a ghost into your own vision, and look fucking cool in the process, which is of course the primary criteria for choosing your build. Tsushima's build potential lends that freedom of expression and that drip or drown excellence without compromising the direction or consistency of its narrative and themes, which, as you're about to find out, is not a big surprise. Before we get back to the combat analysis, we have to talk about a little thing called ludonarrative dissonance. Now, if you're a regular games analysis video enjoyer, you're probably rolling your eyes right now. But when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima, one of its more popular criticisms revolves around this very topic. I'll elaborate. Ludonarrative dissonance is the conflict between a game's story and its gameplay, where the actions that the player is allowed to perform actively contradict the events, motivations, and contextual foreground presented through the game's narrative. I've already praised Tsushima's ludonarrative strength when it comes to its world, but in this case the more contentious aspect has to do with its mechanics, mainly Jin's narrative transition being a fixed path from samurai to ghost. But at every stage, gameplay lets you choose between combat and stealth, between honor and dishonor, regardless of where you are in the story. And in exercising that freedom and playing the specific role of an honorable samurai in combat, a disconnect is presumably formed between gameplay and narrative. So, what's the solution, you might say? Less samurai combat? No, that would mean less fun. But a morality system? Tangible choice within the game's narrative? Maybe. There is an undeniable framework here for a completely different experience within this game's bones. This is a story driven by the morality of honor, centered around a protagonist who's constantly forced to choose between respecting and abandoning it, walk the path of the samurai, or descend into the ghost. An enticing premise, and your first handful of dishonorable kills hint at its framework. Couple that with the knowledge that Sucker Punch is no stranger to a morality system, and you have yourself the grounds for expectation, for potential. But I'm not here to argue in favor of it, because this game isn't Cyberpunk. It didn't spend 100% of its marketing budget convincing you that it's an RPG, only to launch and not be an RPG. Ghost of Tsushima is an open-world game with a linear narrative, and this story is a fixed descent from samurai to ghost in every way, and there's no such dissonance here. Jin's narrative and mechanical progression are as entwined as they are consistent, and that's a statement I intend to prove. The sacrifice of a fixed journey in this game's case often means compromise. Compromise in the form of forced stealth in a number of missions, which trade agency for narrative context. And hey, in most cases that's a poor excuse for eliminating player choice. But here, it's not without its purpose. Take Azumel Bay, a carefully curated stealth sequence that has you weaving between rooftops, tactically witnessing the barbarity of Mongol occupancy as they slaughter and torture prisoners. If you get spotted, it's game over, which is limiting, and not very fun given how generic this game's stealth is. But in being forced to stay hidden and witness the cruelty on display, the stakes of the invasion are reinforced, and the tension of knowing what would happen to Taka and the other prisoners if you got caught is all the narrative context you need. Not all scenarios where forced stealth is imposed are as gracefully supported by this level of impact, but its polar opposite is also here. Forced combat in missions like Message of Fire, where Jin travels to a smuggler's cove, seeking a shady acquaintance of Lord Shimura's, with the goal of sending word for reinforcements to the Shogun. The mission itself shines a light on the mostly unexplored criminal element of the island, and is quite interesting because of it, but its true purpose is to deepen the player's connection and understanding with Shimura, to reinforce the principles that drive him, and fight by his side one last time before the wedge between Jin and his uncle reaches an impasse. Jin is in a place where he has not yet embraced the ghost, and with his uncle present, that means no stealth, or in other words, forced combat. I'm not saying that forced stealth or combat is good, because it's not. I'm just saying it's here. And it's here for a reason, and that reason is strong enough to carry this game through its best moments. And combat is an integral part of it. When it comes back to combat, Act 2 kicks things up a notch. A noticeable increase in challenge across the board raises the skill floor required to dance between Mongols through a universal health buff and a range of new enemy types that attempts to alter the rhythm of combat. Shield Mongols now equipped with flaming swords eliminate blocks and parries as a defense. New ranged enemies like flaming archers, sticky bomb, and black powder equipped Mongols increase the density and variety of ranged threats you have to juggle. These enemy types increase the variety, but fails to alter the rhythm as each is still best fought through the same exploitable stance swapping tactics, which renders the depth unchanged. But there is an exception, and the Ronin are it. Ryozo's men, now allied with the Mongols, are the only enemies in the game to actively punish aggression. They have no trouble deflecting intentless attacks, countering with speed and retaliation, and are best fought with patience and restraint, seizing openings through well-timed defensive maneuvers. You can't brute force them, and it's a refreshing disruption to the stance-swapping rotation of staggerable foes, and are Tsushima's sole example of combat escalation that increases the depth beyond a marginal variation or a numbers boost. But enemies are not the only thing that scales, because Jin's moveset is not done evolving, and with each new ability, that line between Samurai and Ghost grows thinner. The Heavenly Strike and Dance of Wrath are high-risk, high-reward abilities that trade Resolve for unblockable, devastating violence. Explosive and flaming arrows expand the bow's repertoire, enabling powerful explosive attacks and the weaponization of the environment itself. And now enter ghost weapons, tools that subsequently deepen combat to levels it can barely keep up with. Quickfire kunai lets you stagger enemies instantaneously, bypassing the discipline of stance play. Time them right and they can chain perfectly into your attacks, be seamlessly woven into combos, and used to dismantle and dismember any Mongol you choose, regardless of the stance you're using. Sticky bombs and black powder bombs elevate that same philosophy. As Mongol hordes grow denser, they become a destructive means of controlling the battlefield through a targeted short radius stun, or a wider, disruptive boom. Way of the Flame enhances your attacks for a short period of time, burning through both defenses and morality alike, and the Smoke Bomb is perhaps the purest expression of Jin's moral decay, used to disappear in a flash and ideally re-enter stealth, but given the nature of most environments, and Jin's limited movement, its far more practical use is a quick and easy chain assassination. The more your legend grows in Tsushima, the more ghost weapons you unlock, and the more your fighting style evolves, it grows less rigid, less noble, and more versatile, and that line between Ghost and Samurai disintegrates. Combat shifts from rigid structure to flexible improvisation. Stance matchups still matter, but Ghost weapons create shortcuts, alternate solutions to every problem. Kunai and Way of the Flame replace heavy stance work for instant stagger, bombs replace precise spacing for crowd control, and smoke replaces positioning for a get-out-of-jail-free card. But you can't rely on Ghost weapons constantly, because they're finite, and resource management is a layer of depth that's as much at play here as the dance of target prioritization, or the chessboard of spatial control over arenas. Balanced through their scarcity, each Ghost weapon circumvents parts of the Samurai's intended limitations, and in doing so, deepens combat through means just as dishonorable as stealth. There's no honor in slicing throats from afar with kunai, or vanishing in a cloud of smoke to strike unseen. There's nothing pure about burning men alive in the name of protection, and I'll be damned if that's not intentional. But fear, above all, becomes the final weapon to complete Jin's transformation, in both gameplay and narrative. Fear incarnate. Jin's transformation is complete. Kill 7 enemies without taking damage, and you can channel the Ghost's vengeance. Unleash a terror so overwhelming that every Mongol in sight collapses in fear. Paralyzed, screaming, they can only cower and wait for the Ghost to end their torment. Mastery over combat is rewarded, and fear becomes a mechanic. Even outside of the Ghost stance, every perfect parry, every kill, every enemy you set ablaze carries a chance to terrify those nearby. It's a system you can build around, one that weaponizes your legend inside the very minds of your enemies. And it signals the end of any shred of honor that might have remained in Jin. Combat is no longer driven by a samurai's code, but instead the vengeance of a bloodthirsty demon, a ghost. And this moment in Yarikawa stands out as quite the remarkable climax. Exuberating, momentous, grand, and terrifying. This mission is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of, if not the best mission in the game. It's the perfect encapsulation of what makes Ghost of Tsushima so damn brilliant. And in understanding why, it will bring us full circle. With the samurai's coming assault on Castle Shimura, Jin's uncle needs soldiers, and Yarikawa is the last surviving stronghold still under siege. But Yarikawa has no love for the Jito. Ever since Shimura himself crushed its rebellion decades ago, their clan was reduced to ash, and its people have not forgotten. Jin's task appears insurmountable. The people of Yarikawa will not rally behind the man who once butchered them, but they just might stand with the Ghost. If there's one defining strength that Ghost of Tsushima emanates, it's a narrative, mechanical, and thematic synergy, a singular progressional evolution that takes place and is reinforced throughout every facet of this game. We begin this story a broken samurai. Combat is depthless and challenging. Tsushima is hopeless and on fire. But every Mongol leader killed, every tale completed, every outpost liberated builds your legend, evolves your moveset, weaving ghost tactics, depth, and dishonor into the mechanical web of progression. All while your legend spreads throughout the island, taking life in the whispers of allies and enemies alike. Jin lived the massacre at Komoda Beach. He failed in facing the Khan head-on, was stabbed in the back, and has been pushed and pushed into brutality and dishonor every step of the way. And every step of the way, combat shifts further from honor to brutality. Stealth grows increasingly lethal. Mythic tales reinforce the power of your legend, while character and basic tales draw parallels to Jin's transition and remind us of who we're fighting for. Everything you do builds your legend. Every time your legend grows, ghost tactics expand, whispers spread like a wildfire, and the story's dramatic structure is reinforced. Combat, stealth, character, and world transform simultaneously. Content is tied to progression. Progression feeds your legend, and your legend shapes the world. And everything ties back to this narrative, to becoming the Ghost. And the Siege of Yarikawa is the moment Jin embraces it. There is much at play here when it comes to what makes this moment so great. Yes, its writing is brilliant. The characters you bond with are real and compelling, and the tension, build-up, and execution of the siege itself is a spectacle and a triumph of narrative and gameplay-driven action. But it's more than that. It's how progression and combat reinforce this moment, how tangible the Ghost's legend is throughout the world as it builds, and how interconnected everything feels to this moment. The Ghost isn't an assassin. It's a power fantasy, an unstoppable, terrifying force of nature that you become over the course of this game, that you embody with every swing of both your katana and your tanto. And so any notion of dissonance between gameplay and narrative is a lie. Even when the choice between combat and stealth persists, combat is no longer the choice to be honorable. It's the choice to put your vengeance on display. Stealth, while failing to be anything more than depthless mediocrity, is even given new life in the specific scenario of carving a path to Mongol leaders. It requires careful planning, and is both extrinsically rewarding through an instant ghost dance activation and intrinsically exhilarating because it is so fucking cool to pull off. Ghost of Tsushima is a game ripe with damning, game-spanning flaws. But every time stealth fails to be interesting, every time the camera makes you play Guess Who, even when nearly all of this game's content is mechanically repetitive to a crippling fault one way or another, that synergy, that unbreakable, consistent vision in bringing this story to life throughout every facet of this experience is unshakably immersive. And that's a powerful thing. It's what makes Ghost of Tsushima an epic. And you want to know the best part? This moment is only the first crescendo in this symphony, because this tale is far from over.
Yuna! We saved your town. Now, we help Lord Shimura save our island!
We are not soldiers!
Who killed these Mongols? Who stood against the siege? Who saved Yarikawa? We did.
You can't just stay here and wait for the Mongols to try again!
You say you are not soldiers. You are warriors. We can defeat the invaders and save our home. But only if we stand together.
In a nutshell, that's what I think makes this game stand apart. Not just its brilliant writing or cinematic presentation, but how it's unified through its systems. But wow, that was a long segment. We've covered combat, progression, pretty much everything gameplay related in Acts 1 and 2 in excruciating detail. I think I've earned a break. So I'm just gonna hop in this hot spring here and rest for a moment. Ugh. Cheeks bathed in desert springs. Subscribe, viewer, and you'll be firm, unclenched, and free.
I am Melania, Blade of Mikola.
Wait, what's that? Oh fuck, wake up, wake up, wake up. No, not again, please, God. That was weird. We've covered the open world, its side content, combat, and the crux of Tsushima's brilliance. But Jin's journey is far from over. He's embraced the ghost, cleansed Yarikawa of the Mongol infection, and struck a ripple of fear throughout invaders across the island. But much like a Minecraft YouTuber's career after DMing a child, his descent is far from over. And with Ryuzo's location revealed, Jin is out for blood.
You know why I've come.
Yes. I made sure you'd know where to find me. The Khan wants to meet you.
I'm not here to talk. You betrayed us all.
We can save our home together. It doesn't have to be like this.
Yes, Ryuzo. It does.
The savior of Yarikawa, the bloodthirsty demon, everyone, gets bonked by fucking dollar store Kung Lao. My god, that is cinema.
Arek. Milk from my favorite horse. Her final gift to me. She broke her egg yesterday, so I fed her to my men. We do what we must, Lord Sakai. That is why you and I are both survivors.
I am samurai.
No, you are more than that. You are the ghost. Convince your people to join me, and I will give them peace.
We will never serve you.
Your uncle said the same thing. But I asked him to end this war.
He refused to be your slave.
I too have pride in family. And I know what it's like to live in their shadow. Why should we settle for scraps when we deserve to be legends?
He is a legend.
See? Your people will follow you. Join me and save them.
You want to divide and conquer. You did it to Ryuzo. Not us.
Oh. Your legend does not even care about you. If you kill him, you can go.
Run.
Stop! Tell you not!
Now, is Jin getting knocked out by one lousy dude with a stick absolutely fucking ridiculous based off the power differential we've already established by this point? Yes, but oh boy, you forget the absurdity quickly. Yuna's only mission in life is to protect her brother. Her only goal this entire game has been to get them both off the island to start a new life, which she almost does like 4 separate times. But she stayed for Jin, Taka stayed for the ghost, and now he's gone. An emotional gut punch like no other that ultimately sends Jin over the edge and past the point of no return. The people of Yarikawa have rallied behind the ghost, the Shogun's reinforcements have arrived, and with Jin's allies and Shimura's army finally assembled, we enter Act 2's finale with the taste for blood and the illusion of unity. And it starts with a bang. An assault on Castle Shimura crashes forward with every ounce of momentum this game has built. A kinetic surge of steel, fire, and spectacle ripples as one army is met with another. But contrary to previous outings with Shimura, Jin is done pretending, done hiding behind the code that's failed him and his people so many times. And he takes action his way.
Run home, Japanese dogs! This gate will not open for you!
Run, cowards! Jin! What are you doing?
Clearing the way.
Not like that. Never like that. Face them as a warrior with honor, not a monster.
It's all they understand.
Terror is not the weapon of a samurai.
It's here where we begin to arrive at this story's emotional crux, the heart of Jin's internal struggle and his biggest sacrifice yet. Let's set the scene a bit.
The Shogun formally supports my decision to adopt you. When our island is saved, you will be heir to Clan Shimura. Not as a ghost, but as a samurai.
Lord Shimura has been more than an uncle to Jin. He's been a father, the man who took him in when his family was gone, who gave him purpose, structure, and discipline in place of the rage that sparked within him. Honor, above all, is Shimura's absolute belief, his very core defined by his devotion to the ways of the samurai, to a code that's inseparable from right, revoked from doubt, and insurmountably repulsed by change. And he's passed on that ideology to Jin. But Jin was never like him, not since watching his father die. Shimura's teachings gave Jin direction, but they never extinguished that original flame. Throughout this campaign, the arrogance of the samurai sticks out like a penis in a glory hole. and Shimura is no exception. He led the charge at Komoda Beach headfirst into a massacre, and still he clings to his ideals. He casts down condescending distaste towards Yuna, despite her being the only reason he's alive, and then turns around and sends Jin to an even shadier friend of his, blind to the hypocrisy. Shimura's devotion to his ideals continues to blind him to the realities of this war. But on the other hand, Jin's solution is far from noble. Indulging in the brutality and savagery of his enemies, no matter how justified, is a dark path not exempt from damning repercussions. As Jin bends his uncle's code, you can feel the wedge between them deepen, a quiet, ramping friction building in the Tarantino-grade subtext as Jin's honor is chipped away, and Shimura refuses to accept it. And the strain that's been building this entire game hits its breaking point when they reach an impasse, where a chain reaction is set off that shatters their bond for good.
Those poor souls.
He sent them to die. For nothing.
We must honor their sacrifice.
Gather our best soldiers. We will repair the bridge and attack at dawn.
Shimura clings to his ideals yet again, ordering the bridge rebuilt and his men to charge headfirst into a massacre, again. And Jin will not stand for it.
Find a way past the bridge. Poison the enemy.
An act of terror.
I am trying to save our people.
By teaching them to fear us. If you continue down this path, you will be no better than the Mongols. I trained you to fight with honor.
Honor died on the beach. The Khan deserves to suffer.
You are ruled by your emotion.
I sacrificed everything I knew to save our people. I gave them hope. You did nothing.
While the path he's treading is dark and twisted, Jin has made up his mind, and it's Castle Shimura, where he passes the point of no return. Castle Shimura is a multi-layered outpost that lives up to the hype, in that there isn't any. By this point, you've done far too many outposts to expect anything special here. But it's big, and stealth only, and it's challenging. There are intricate paths to uncover if you want to weave through enemies undetected, and while the game's dense AI continues to suck depth and immersion from stealth like it's being paid by the hour, Mongols are everywhere. Absolutely fucking everywhere, which is a presence that's essential in building the payoff to Jin's objective. Because we're here to poison the milk. And we do. And now, there's just one more loose end we have to tie up.
Where's the Khan?
He rode north. Made me stay behind to collect the ghost's head.
Then come claim it.
No. I could have killed you earlier. Instead, I convinced the Khan to give you a chance.
He murdered Taka.
And you slaughtered my men. I've lost everything. Except you. We can defeat the Mongols together.
After everything you've done!
Tell the people I was your spy. Sent to gain the Khan's trust. They'll believe the ghost.
Stop! You were my oldest friend, Ryuzo. Surrender. And answer for your crimes. For both our sakes.
I can't.
Out of options and backed into a corner, Ryuzo extends a hand to his friend one last time, and unfortunately for him, it's in vain. because Jin is done listening, done seeing the best in others. And this rematch can only end one way.
Jin. Please.
Goodbye, Yuzo. Yuzo.
Good.
The castle is yours. The Khan marches north. We can head him off.
You defied me!
I did what I had to. For them.
Is this how you want to be remembered?
He defended us.
By spreading fear and chaos?
We are at war.
And you are acting like the enemy. This is not our way.
Your way can't save our people.
The Shogun will demand a head. But it does not have to be yours. I know she drove you to this.
Uncle.
Renounce the ghost. You must blame her for this outrage. Tell them you are Jin Shimura, loyal servant to the Shogun. My heir. My son.
I am not your son. I am the ghost.
And you will be judged for it.
Surrounded by the horrors of the ghost's vengeance, Act 2 ends not with triumph, but tragedy. Jin's made his choice, and with it, the propulsive highs of this game's mechanical, moral, and narrative roller coaster are met with a crashing low. Tsushima's second crescendo is an emotional shockwave that will be felt throughout the rest of this game. The ghost now stands alone, and Act 3 never reaches those heights again.
I'm sorry I couldn't protect you.
cold, exiled, and alone. Jin's given everything he has, sacrificed his honor, his legacy, his family for Tsushima. And he's been vilified for it, cast out and disowned, and there's no turning back now. The Khan must die. Much like my childhood, the region of Act 3 is cold and unforgiving. Coated in ice and snow, the once visceral clash of elegance and carnage is replaced with cold, barren tundra. No matter how much burns in the Khan's wake, or how much vibrance seeps through the cracks, the unrelenting frost persists, and becomes an allegory for Jin's exile, as we're barred from returning to the previous two regions, but also the game as a whole, as cracks form in the ice of its systems, and this game's brilliance begins to freeze. Act 3 is, in my humble opinion, the weakest stretch of the game, by a well-defined collection of problems. It's here where I stopped chasing golden birds out of curiosity, stopped following the smokestacks to nearby outposts for the thrill of the encounter. This is the point where the open world grew monotonous, where I was tired of outposts, sick of fox dens, where the campaign slowed to a crawl, and where core systemic flaws found within this game's bones surfaced, and killed what should have been the apex of this fantasy. Act 3 stumbles clumsily to its finale in more ways than one, and to outline exactly how it does, we can visualize its core problems as a structure supported by 3 pillars. Each pillar represents a core competency of this game that's weakened in its third act, by problems both systemic to the entire game and uniquely prominent in Act 3, but all collectively work to cripple the supporting structure on top, the final, overarching result of the combined pillars below. Through this genius analogy, you will understand what the fuck I'm on about, and more importantly, what's left of this game when its magic fades. Starting with our first pillar, combat, is solved. Much of my praise for Tsushima's early to mid-game brilliance lies in its distribution of power progression. Every few hours a new stance, ghost weapon, or deadly technique slips into your hands, each expanding the grammar of combat, while new and tougher enemy types resets the rhythm of mechanical escalation. And then, Act 3 arrives, and the music stops. Progression hits its cap. By this point, you've more than likely already filled out every meaningful branch of the skill tree, and Way of the Flame sits more a lonely footnote than a final evolution. But being max level by the end of a game is not a negative quality on its own, because in most action titles, this is where the final exam is unveiled. The end game, the trial by fire that pulls together everything you've learned and puts your mastery to the test. Fallen Order does this exceptionally well on its final planet. The entire level is a gauntlet of challenging combat encounters. It doesn't introduce any new mechanics or enemies, but it designs encounters that are dense, and that pressure your knowledge of its systems in a way that echoes the narrative stakes of the game's climax. Arkham City, a far more direct comparison, escalates just as well. The city in Act 3 becomes crawling with armed thugs. Its late game levels are pressure cookers of predator and free flow encounters that enables the Batman fantasy to reach its mechanical peak. A good endgame doesn't have to be about new systems, gadgets, or abilities. It just has to be its fantasy at its apex. A balance of extrinsic mastery and intrinsic expression. Become the Batman. Ascend to Jedi Knighthood. But Ghost, despite having the depth of a rich combat system, the tools for dynamic stealth, and a damn compelling fantasy, it has no such exam. No endgame sandbox that pushes combat to its skill ceiling. Not in its outposts, and certainly not in its campaign. Instead, it defines its endgame through another HP boost, a select number of marginally larger outposts, and, oh yeah, archers have poisoned arrows. And that's not enough. Not on par with the escalation of challenge at the start of Act 2, and not sufficient for an engaging endgame. In fact, when you factor in that the Ronin are entirely absent from this region, the single most mechanically interesting enemy is also gone, and the game's final act ends up with less enemy variety and less challenge than the mid-game. And the main reason for that isn't because there's nothing new. No, it's because of this guy, and this guy, him too. And remember him? Yeah, remember this game's dense AI and how it sucks the depth out of stealth? Well, it becomes the final nail in the coffin for Tsushima's endgame, because its implications bleed well beyond just stealth and subsequently cripple this game's attempt to create that final exam. Let's take a look at the only addition here that shows any promise. Larger outposts, sprawling encampments crawling with more Mongols than any prior encounters I've seen before, and usually equipped with Hwachas, a new layer of target prioritization that rains fire on you from above, increasing the depth and changing your approach as you're pressured to target them first. The Ghost against an army. And unfortunately, it doesn't play out as enticingly as that sounds. And that's because the implications of Tsushima's Harvard-educated enemies absolutely neuters the depth and challenge of pretty much all outposts throughout this game. But these ones especially, because when a base is alerted, the base isn't alerted. In fact, the game barely reacts at all. A guard might shout, a couple others might run over, and if there are a few Mongols within arm's reach, they'll attack you. But anyone beyond that immediate radius is indifferent. Oblivious, actually. I could lodge an explosive arrow into the eye socket of one Mongol, set his friend on fire, and detonate a thermonuclear bomb inside a hut. And not 4 feet away, Tim from Sales here won't bat a fucking eye. There's even a very loud, very audible horn the Mongols will sound when you're spotted. And even then, bases almost never escalate to full-scale alerts. Reinforcements don't arrive, loud explosions and the screams of dying colleagues fail to turn the heads of enemies well within earshot, and within a minute, you can be back to stealth status quo, with a baffling blow to your immersion. What this does is strip the tension away from stealth, and neuters the dichotomy of combat and stealth in outposts, as stealth becomes an actively difficult state to relinquish. Early game, this reduces the risk that samurai combat brings, and late game, it deprives you of combat at its best, because you can't experience the overwhelming onslaught of an entire base swarming you in combat. You can't organically face hordes of Mongols large enough to pressure extrinsic use of your entire arsenal, and when you do, it's rare, and usually sheer luck. And that cripples this endgame's challenge, and decimates the endgame power fantasy that should be flourishing here. When stealth remains trivial, and combat is rarely fought in groups larger than 3 or 4, you won't need to use ghost weapons to deal with enemy density, and you're not extrinsically pushed to master combat, which renders it solved. Simplistically exploited through stances, and ghost weapons become an overpowered means to end fights instantly rather than a resource for valuable CC or a strategic kill. It's important to keep in mind that this criticism is based off a hard mode playthrough, at which point you may wonder, does lethal difficulty solve this? No. It makes mistakes more punishing, which is more challenging, but still inherits all the same problems. The only exception to this game's total failure in late game escalation lies in huachas and eagles. Eagles are birds that can spot you from above, and do actually alert an entire base as a result. But much like huachas, the amount they appear in this game, total sum, can be counted on one hand, which is very disappointing. And so, Tsushima utterly fails to find a proper endgame fantasy in its third act. But the circumstances and how it does are present throughout the entire game. After all, Tim from Sales here was always a dumbass. So why now? Well, that has to do with our second pillar, novelty. The novelty of new combat, stealth, and exploration mechanics is long gone by Act 3, and in its place, repetition rears its ugly head. Repetition is a scourge on many aspects of this game, and that's no secret. It plagues the open world, makes me cringe at the sight of fox dens, infects every tale with a copy and pasted quest structure. And outposts. Outposts are this game's bread and butter, the core foundation of this game's mechanical sandbox, designed to be repeated, altered, and escalated. Except we've already established that they don't escalate, and in this game, it's rarely altered to any significance. And by the time you reach Act 3, this game's bread and butter becomes more like burnt toast, because everything in this game is an outpost. They all look the same, they all play the same, and for the campaign especially, it makes for a complete and utter lack of variety in mission design. And if this game makes me do one more of these fucking things, I promise you, I'm taking the toaster with me to the next hot spring, because I am done. Let's look at the campaign. In Act 1, 7 of its 10 missions has Jin infiltrate or attack an outpost. This is not including the prologue, which has you sneak through one. Act 2 is better. 5 of its 9 missions follow the outpost formula, and there's a noticeable momentum in how these missions are driven by its ramping narrative, which is another reason why Act 2 is hands down the best part of the game. But in Act 3, well, 5 of its 6 missions are outposts, meaning of this campaign's 24 missions, 17 of them are outposts, and factor in the 38 more spread across the open world. And this game boils down to a repetitive string of the same goddamn thing, over and over again, to an absurd degree. And okay, that fact in a vacuum does paint an unfairly harsh picture, because story, above all, is what catapults this game forward when all else fails to, and a few outposts do manage to somewhat stand apart. Mainly this one due to its vertical design emphasizing use of the grappling hook, along with the finales of each act, which all functionally serve as bigger, multi-layered outposts, which do feel different and work for the most part. But repetition persists. Novelty by definition is engagement through one spark of curiosity, The quality of something new, original, or unusual is inherently exciting. We humans are psychologically engineered to follow that spark, to engage with something new far more than with something we've seen plenty of before. In games, that's what drives innovation, to appeal to that desire to discover, that satisfaction in learning a new thing or experiencing something new. It's a great way to keep you from getting bored, and from fixating on a game's flaws with a shiny new distraction that ignites that spark again. That spark can be lit by anything from environments, mechanics, narrative elements, or any number of components that make up the core experience of a game. Compare the museum in Arkham City to the industrial mill or Wonder City, each a vastly different set of environments, each introducing new enemies, new gadgets, and a unique atmosphere contextualized by the villains that inhabit it. Cyberpunk found its novelty through the diversity of its subgenres, each stretch of its campaign weaving heist elements, detective noir, political espionage, and more into the bones of its core narrative. Ghost has no such variety, not in its arenas, not in its missions, and certainly not in its open world. And when the novelty of new gameplay additions ceases in Act 3, not in its gameplay either. Tsushima is at war with repetition, constantly and omnipresently, and when all else fails, its last anchor point is narrative. But even that, by Act 3, eventually fades. As Jin is exiled, disowned by the man who raised him, and stripped of the last tether to his old life, an emotional hangover resonates in a way that points to a darker, more introspective climb ahead. They killed the horse, the oldest trick in the book, and goddammit if it doesn't work every time. The Mongols have recreated Jin's poison, and the Khan now seeks to set it loose on the mainland. But as Jin wanders in the cold, unarmed, vulnerable, and burdened by the weight of his choices, Act 3 never begins its climb. The pacing slows to a crawl, and rightfully so, but it doesn't pick back up again. Instead, it limps towards its finale as narrative, our third pillar, weakens the final stretch of this game. The root of this lethargy lies in how meandering the plot feels. Up to this point, Ghost has been spinning multiple narrative wheels. Jin's moral descent, his fracturing relationship with Shimura, Yuna's ideology pulling him further from his uncle's code, and the Khan's reign of terror, which has been largely left in the background, until, well, now presumably, except his presence is still kept largely in the background, and with nothing else really propelling any meaningful character or story development, it feels sluggish. This should have been where the Khan becomes this story's gravitational center, where his presence as a villain is amplified and fuels the soul fire burning Jin's path forward. But Tsushima takes the same approach as previous acts. He's absent until the final showdown, and what fills the gaps is as uninteresting in story as it is in gameplay. Meeting up with a group of former bandits who have ties to Yuna poses an interesting question. Why? Are we meeting new characters who don't matter and trying to flesh out Yuna again by adding on to her already explored rocky past? This is far from necessary. Yuna is plenty fleshed out, and Jin knows her so well by this point he doesn't even bat an eye on learning that she used to be a bandit. But after teaming up with said bandits and taking another outpost, clearing the way north for our allies, we scout Port Izumi, which should feel like we're staring into the jaws of the endgame. But it's just another outpost, and nothing happens character-wise. Returning to Castle Shimura actually does achieve something meaningful in the realm of story and character, but even this mission is slow, and largely reflective as we're given a window into the ramifications Shimura is facing, as he publicly condemns his nephew. But we don't transition into the rising action that a final act needs, because the following mission is supposed to be the first climax of this entire game, and it in no way feels like that's where we're heading. If there's one thing that Act 3 gets right, it's atmosphere. Cold, empty, and isolating, a perfect mirror to Jin's current state. But beneath it, it lacks the substance that once drove this narrative engine. A scattering of tasks, some throwaway characters, and a half-assed setup for a final showdown that should feel like a cathartic stroke of revenge. But it's all lacking what once held up Tsushima's crowning strength, the supported structure held up by our three crumbling pillars. Momentum. Combat is solved. Novelty succumbs to repetition, narrative stalls, and the momentum that's defined so much of what once propelled this game past its flaws is shattered. And that's why Act 3 loses steam. Momentum is a hard thing to quantify. It's intangible for the most part, more than just the pacing of a story or the distribution of gameplay. But when it's gone, you do notice it. The wind in Tsushima's sails is punctured by the pillars I've outlined, and that hurts this game. But luckily for Ghost, they're not gone for good. The Khan's departure is upon us, which means this is Jin's last chance to end him, and the game's last chance to restore what was lost. Port Izumi finds Tsushima's momentum again. A battle rages with every ounce of scale and finality as its prior peaks, and the Khan is finally within our grasp. and it's time to face him, this time not as a samurai, but as the Ghost. Phase 1 is the duel. The Khan's moveset is aggressive and unblockable, leaving small openings for damage and minimal opportunities to parry. As far as boss fights go, it's another duel, and that means it's good, but also nothing special. But it's his second phase where we find true innovation. Equipped with all major weapon types, the Khan switches weapons as often as Jin does his stances, each with a unique moveset, each countered with a corresponding stance, which you've more than mastered by this point. It's new, it's novel, it's baffling that it took this long for such an obvious evolution, but this fight is no longer a duel, but a bloodbath as an army surrounds you, and you have to contend with the Mongols' growing numbers amidst the Khan's onslaught of aggressive attacks. Wave after wave, extrinsic mastery of your entire arsenal is pressured as you break through each of the Khan's weapons. There's tension, there's stakes, and a level of challenge that Act 3 has sorely missed, and by the time it's over, you'll be wishing there was more.
We will be remembered forever.
No, you will be forgotten.
And just like that, the Khan is dead, and Tsushima is saved. And there's a rather present emptiness in this victory, an absent sense of finality, a missing catharsis. This climax is hurt by its lack of build-up. It brings an almost jarring shift in momentum at the start of the battle, and it's over so quick, the Khans and the Mongols' defeat as a whole feels rather anticlimactic, which for me is a negative. Because a second climax only feels like a second climax when the first is satisfying. And there is a second climax. After all, Ghost of Tsushima was never just about saving the island from the invasion, and its true finale takes us right back to the epicenter of its brilliance.
I will miss this.
So will I. The Shogun has declared you a traitor.
He ordered you to kill me.
The Ghost was an outlaw. He taught our people to defy their leaders.
To defend themselves.
With poison, a gift you gave to our enemy.
I had to stop you from throwing away our people's lives.
You have no honor.
And you are a slave to it.
You are my son. Now I must continue the line of Shimura without you. I must start a new family.
And my head is the cost.
Taking it is my punishment. Our final day together. It is beautiful.
We've come full circle. Tsushima is saved, and this story's final crescendo is a tragedy. A duel between a father and son who once fought side by side, who once trained in these very gardens, is forced upon us. And there couldn't be a more powerful range of emotions charging this fight. Every slash to Shimura's body hurts you as much as him. Every line of dialogue between the two as the fight ensues is heartbreaking. It's dramatic, it's tense, it's the climax to a haunting and beautiful tale. And when it's over, you're faced with a harrowing choice. The Khan was the catalyst of Jin's transformation, and Shimura is the ultimate price. Kill Shimura, respect his final wish, and let him die with honor. Or spit on his code one last time, refuse to bow to his ideals, and leave him alive, in shame and dishonor, which for Shimura is a fate far worse than death.
I will make sure you are remembered as a great warrior, a wise leader, and a father.
find me in the next life.
I will.
Now, I'm not going to say which choice is the correct one here, because truly, it walks the perfect balance of moral ambiguity. There's no right or wrong answer here. Both equate to emotional damage of the red wedding variety. And honestly, I'd be split to the core between which to choose if the white ghost armor didn't look so damn sexy. Yeah, sorry man. The drip just drips. It's time to go. What we have here is a damn near perfect end to a journey that reminds us of what games are capable of. A medium that doesn't just tell stories but puts one in your hands. Enables a vision to take life in ways that are impossible to replicate. Despite its flaws, Ghost of Tsushima tells an excellent story, through more than just its writing or cutscenes. It's an evolution felt within every inch of its world, a harrowing tale of sacrifice, a samurai epic in every sense of the word. And it has a DLC. So let's go there. A new island, a new legend. Iki Island is the first and only expansion to Ghost of Tsushima, and you can start it as early as Act 2. After whispers of a dangerous poison reach the shores of Tsushima, Jin sets sail from the boreal edges of his home and gets soaked in a vibrant oasis. Literally because his boat capsizes, and physically as Iki is coated in warm tropical vibrance, where the flora and landforms of what you've come to know are blended with beaches so tropical you can almost picture Jack Sparrow scavenging for rum. But as Jin crawls from the wreckage of his boat, no rum is to be found, but there are pirates. Raiders really. But Iki Island is a place well known to Jin, as his father once waged war on the raiders who live here, under the guise of bringing order to an uncivilized people. Yeah, Papa Sakai racked up some serious war crimes here, and it's this very island where Jin watched him die as a result. The samurai are considered vile tyrants to the people of Iki, and with the ghost's legend not having reached its shores, Jin's new legend is that of the samurais. And in facing the sins of his father, and the trauma that's plagued him his whole life, Iki rolls back the scale of Tsushima's grand invasion, and tells a tale grounded in character, one that explores the depths of Jin's very psyche, as he works to defeat the Mongol known as the Eagle. He'll wrestle with inner demons, trip balls on acid, and stumble across refinements to this game's systems that make this expansion a breath of fresh air and a worthy send-off to a memorable game. Iki's efforts to not only refine elements of the base game, but expand them are immediately apparent. Mounted combat sees its first evolution in the horse charge, drain resolve and enter encounters like it's Grand Theft Auto. Plus, your horse has drip now, and it's awesome. But once dismounted, Iki's array of new enemy types shakes up the cadence of combat with an entirely new rhythm. The first and most interesting, the Shaman, a support archetype who buffs all enemies around them. When a Shaman chants, Mongol attacks become quicker, guard barriers are near unbreakable, and attacks deal more damage. They become the first enemy you'll want to take out, and the depth and challenge they add to encounters grows immeasurable in the face of the base game's evolutions. And they're not the only additions. Enemies now carry multiple weapons, meaning they can switch on the fly, keeping you vigilant on your stance swapping. New brute variants equipped with twin blades carry a dangerous new moveset that's difficult to dodge, and halberds are a new weapon type that both spearmen and brutes can equip, and brings with it a wider array of unblockable attacks, which brings back a layer of challenge that I didn't realize was missing. By Act 2, the base game made it rather easy to rely on parries, to sleepwalk through the routine of one stance equals enemy dead, rinse and repeat. But with a broader range of unblockables, the capacity for enemies to change weapons, and an arrangement of new movesets and abilities to adapt to, combat finds novelty again, and a level of challenge that its late game was missing. It's a fresh coat of paint that I just couldn't help but fill my lungs with. And let me tell you, the high was exhilarating. As for the open world, Iki's commitment to refinement lies in new exploration activities. Don't get me wrong, the classics are back. Bamboo strikes, haikus, even a couple shrines make their return, and I'm thoroughly whelmed with each of them. But animal sanctuaries are a novel inclusion for the mere fact that they're not fox dens. And while playing a quick toot on the flute isn't exactly riveting AAA gameplay, there are slight variations in how you find them. One might be guarded by Mongols, another might have its animals trapped in cages. Small variations do make a tangible difference, and beyond that, archery challenges are an enjoyable test of speed and proficiency in ranged combat. There are 4 puzzles scattered around that pay homage to some familiar Sony titles. Bloodborne PC when Sony? And memories are perhaps the best of Iki's exploration. Each show a sliver of Jin's time here with his father, showing small but ever-telling windows into Kazumasa's brutality, his strained relationship with his son, their shared grief over Jin's mother, and moments of kindness that paint a layered and ever-complex relationship quite efficiently. And these, more than anything, lay integral groundwork for the story at hand. A story that's about to get personal.
May your death benefit all beings.
After finding our horse and attempting to liberate Fort Sakai alone, Jin is captured and given the cheese touch from the eagle, and he trips balls, constantly and at random, but he's eventually saved by a raider named Tenzo, who seems nice and I'm sure has nothing to hide whatsoever. And after a rocky alliance is formed between Jin and the raiders, the war on the eagle properly begins. Jin and the raiders attack a Mongol warship and retake Fort Sakai, all while Jin is posing as a samurai from Yarikawa, given his father was a bit of a war criminal here. But eventually, Tenzo learns the truth, and does nothing as he's the one who vouched for Jin in the first place. And after all, there are bigger fish to fry. And in classic Ghost fashion, this game isn't done with enthralling large-scale battles. Throw in some acid-fueled trauma visions, and a palpable rising tension forms as Jin and his unlikely allies stave off the Mongols. But not before a revelation unearths itself.
May your death benefit all beings.
Jin? May your death benefit all beings. I've heard that before. From my father's killer.
You're hearing things. It's the eagle's poison.
Say the prayer for yourself before I end your life.
Do it. On this blood-soaked ground, where your father massacred hundreds.
He was trying to save lives. You knew who I was. What you did to my father. You lied to my face.
You lied to yourself. Your father was my enemy, not you.
How did someone so worthless defeat Kazumasa Sakai?
I don't know. Luck! He slaughtered dozens of us before we brought him down. Broke his leg, I think. All I did was finish the job. Get on with it, samurai!
Not yet.
Kazumasa Sakai was, to Jin's memory, a father he could idolize without contradiction. And Iki strips that myth away. Kazumasa was no paragon. He was an invader, a war criminal, the man who brought fire and blood to Iki long before the eagle ever did. And when staring down the barrel of it all, Jin, for the first time this entire game, chooses to stop letting his past define him. He chooses forgiveness, or at least the beginnings of it. Iki's finale is the culmination of this arc. Jin and the raiders hunt down the eagle and face her in the same place his father died. Another full circle moment, but this time internalized. The fight itself is held up to this game's standards, and with the eagle's poison still sowing doubt throughout Jin's psyche, it's here where we reach the climax of his arc.
Rid our clan of shame and defeat. Avenge me. Kill him, you coward!
No. I will never be like you. The way you lived was not my choice.
And your death was not my fault.
And bam, Jin overcomes the poison's effects, kills the eagle, and forgives Tenzo, his father, and most importantly, himself. Iki Island restores the pillars of momentum that Act 3 broke. It adds enough new and enough good to find its challenge, novelty, a good story, and as a result, momentum. And a large reason for that is no doubt because it's short. It's the smallest region in the game with only 6 outposts, and a fraction of the content when placed next to any given region in Tsushima, and its campaign follows suit, being roughly a third of the main games. It turns out that sometimes, less is in fact more. This expansion also happens to be the perfect epilogue to Jin's story and the events of the main game. We see Jin confront the root of his darkness, and while you can access this expansion as early as Act 2, Iki Island thematically, mechanically, and narratively is a perfect send-off, a victory lap that celebrates this game's achievements and lends Jin's arc a sense of finality and closure. And little did we know how fitting that would be. Iki is where Jin's story began, and today, it's become where it ends too. Sucker Punch did not continue Jin's story in this game's sequel, and while that topic is for another video, when you look back at this game, it went out on not just a high, but a celebration. And that's a pretty good note to end on, if you ask me. When I look back on Ghost of Tsushima, I remember the good bits. The beauty, the cinematic influence, the incredible story it told. And yet, before making this video, I've only ever played it once. I've tried to come back multiple times, but it is repetitive. Half of its sandbox is uninspired and depthless, and its third act blunders its momentum. And as a result, Ghost of Tsushima has always sat in this strange place of being an unforgettable experience, but one I wasn't keen on returning to. Effort is made for a postgame at the end of it though, which is something I always appreciate. You can replay outposts, which would be great if I wasn't sick of them, and also every duel in the game, which is genuinely great. New Game Plus has a range of new cosmetics to strive for, and there's Legends, a co-op multiplayer spin-off that divides Jin's toolkit into classes and has some surprisingly solid itemization and progression systems to carry it. But to summarize this video's thesis, Ghost of Tsushima is not a game I come back to often, but it's one I'll never forget. It's part of what defined the PS4 era. Its protagonist sits comfortably as one of my favorites, and it, above all, is an exemplary showcase of the power this medium has to bring a story to life. Is it a parkour system away from being the best Assassin's Creed in years? I don't know, I've never played Assassin's Creed, but I do know that Ghost of Tsushima is remarkable, and knowing today the choices its sequel has made, there's nothing else quite like it. Thank you for watching.